Louis the 18th has acted quite despicably. The British have been going off to Ferdinand to say, don't rock the boat, don't do too much, you don't want to have civil war. But Louis the 18th, he arrives, and Napoleon had built up a war chest that Napoleon had of something like 60 million francs, and Louis started burning through this money. And this is at the time when many of the veterans of the French army are now finding it hard. They're falling on hard times. And you've got the officers who are on half pay, and they're starting to feel the effects. And of course, you go into the winter of 1814, and these things are exasperated. And it's at this time that there are the flower of violet are appearing on the lapels of men and in the hair of women, and this is the adopted symbol of Bonapartists. Louis the 18th had obviously he had a lot of issues when he came back. He had been out of the country for 20 years. He was seen as a puppet for the Allies, and he couldn't just return France to pre-Napoleonic times. He couldn't dismiss all the Bonapartist administrators in his government, and he couldn't dispossess many people who had acquired their land during those times. And the returning exiles, a lot of them couldn't receive the compensation that they felt that they were entitled to. And Louis the 18th, he's left having to dismantle this war machine that had become the economic heart of France for the last 25 years. And suddenly you've got 500,000 men who can't be maintained in uniform, and so this 500,000 they're gone back into the country, back into the cities, disgruntled, and say, well, we've got 12,000 officers who are on half pay. Half pay for a captain, I think, was about 73 francs per month, and for a lieutenant it was something like 44. And in 1815 there was 25 francs to the pound. But there was also resentment. There was 300 royalists were commissioned as generals. Basically, Louis the 18th wanted to place his guys back into the army, but many of these royalists, they weren't. They had little or no qualifications, and so all they did was they were just causing dissent among the existing generals. The Imperial Guard was renamed Chasseurs and Grenadiers of France. Their pay was reduced by a third, and they were also dispersed around the country. And news from Vienna. So we got the Congress of Vienna occurring. These are the leaders of Britain, Austria, Russia, Prussia. They're all getting together to discuss basically post-Napoleonic Europe, and what occurs, or is that the Allies themselves start to break down into squabbles and infighting. Basically, as these the victors try to divide up the spoils of war. This is this news is reaching Napoleon on Elba. The Prince de Talleyrand, he had engineered Napoleon's removal and his abdication, and he starts to press for Napoleon to be removed further from France, to be exiled either to the West Indies or to St. Helena, or at least to the Azores. And so Napoleon, again, he must have someone savvy to this information, who writes to him or can convey the information to him. So Napoleon, he knows it's only a matter of time now until he loses Elba and he has to go further afield. He also, when he loses his 2 million francs, he realizes that his allowance and his the revenues that Elba generated wasn't sufficient now to pay the cost of his court. He was even at this time, I think, concerned about assassination, and as we spoke, he wasn't allowed to see his wife, and he wasn't allowed to see his son. British attitudes towards Napoleon were, from many in the Whig side of the politics, they welcomed the French Revolution in many ways. They came to see Napoleon as someone who could bring some control and lessen the excesses of the aristocratic people, and they were hoping that they could import his ideology across the Channel. They chose to ignore Napoleon's excesses, and Napoleon had mentioned later when he was in St. Helena that he had hoped by around about 1804 that he could get a foothold onto the British mainland and receive partisan support from these Whigs. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to do that same sort of thing here. He wants, he's thinking, if I can get back to France, I can hopefully win support in the Tory kind of from these Whigs in Britain that were helping get a topple the Tory government. And this might be where his information is coming from, because a number of Whig MPs from Britain actually visited him on Elba, and it is very possible that they actually encouraged him to take the gamble and leave Elba. But what we have then, we're flying now towards France. This is we've got a situation where Napoleon has he's backed into a corner. He's lost his money. He's lost his titles. He can't see his wife. He can't see his son. He can no longer afford his court. He's getting visited by British MPs wishing to encourage him to come back. He's hearing of the troubles of the Bourbon restoration. He's hearing of veterans and soldiers being disgruntled. He's hearing that his officers are not happy. He's hearing from his generals that these Bourbon royalist generals are basically unworthy. He's seeing that his marshals that he's made are sucking up to his old enemies. And so you can see all this put together, combined with this restless spirit that he has, that he attacked the economic, attacked Elba as if it was a sort of a mini project. He's now bored of that mini project, and he's a gambler. And he's always been a gambler. He's always been on the front foot, keeping his enemies guessing, forcing his enemies to do things that he wants, so that he can take advantage of it. And so you put this guy into that position, then he has one thing on his mind, and that is to come back to France. And unbelievably at this time, that this Sir Neil Campbell, the governor of Elba, he decides that he would take a holiday, and so he returns to the mainland. And that was in February 1815. Now, before we do that, let's just have a look to see what the Duke of Wellington is doing. We haven't approached the coast just yet. So, on the 5th of June, (1814), Wellington has been, he's in Madrid. He's gone to talk to Ferdinand, and he is ordered then to return to Britain. And then on the 23rd of June 1814, he's Wellington steps ashore at Dover. He's been away from Britain for 5 just over 5 years. The last time he was back was in April 1809. He had left when Napoleon was dominating Europe, save for a part of Portugal, and then he returns to Britain. He's not there for very long. He gets to sort out his affairs, and he's then sent from London to Paris to take up his post as ambassador. And this is on the 8th of August. And the significance of this journey that he takes is that on his way he meets he meets up with the Prince of Orange, and he takes the opportunity to survey the fortifications and defensive arrangements of the Low Countries and France. So the war is ended. It's an interesting thing to think about. The war has ended. There's been 25 years of war. You've got the French king back, and the Napoleon is on Elba. But at that time, whether it's the fact that you can never get the soldier out of Wellington, he still is continually surveying the land, presumably because he doesn't trust that the peace is going to last, which is probably a very wise thing. He reviews these the fortifications in Belgium, and some of the ones that the French destroyed north of the border. He recommends that a number of small fortified towns be restored to a reasonable effectiveness, and rather than repairing a larger fortification. So he believes more in this sort of like, well, have lots of smaller forts rather than one big one. And it's at this time, so this is August 1914, that during this reconnaissance, he is believed to have recognized the position to the south of the village of Waterloo. And he is probably doing this everywhere. He's probably keeping notes on wherever he goes. If there's a piece of land that he believes suits his style, he's probably got it noted down, because he knows whenever you are out there in this in the field, you could always retreat to these places if you're on the defensive. So he recognizes the ridge at Mont Saint Jean. He recognizes that it's a lateral ridge. It's got communications that run both east and west and north to south. It straddles across a key road from Brussels to down towards Charleroi and then onwards to Paris. He can see that it's got his beloved reverse slope, so his troops can be kept out of the way of the Grand Battery until it's needed. And he also recognises that this has got some anchoring positions, defensive positions on either side. There's a farmhouse of La Hougomont. There's also a farmhouse in the centre of La Haye-Sainte, and there's also a collection of defendable buildings on his left flank. So he can see that this is a good position to do it. And this is on the road, obviously, down to Charleroi. The main road from Brussels to Paris actually comes through Mons. And so I believe he would be looking for positions like this on every approach to Brussels. He's probably thinking that his Antwerp is his main European supply port, and therefore Brussels is important to protect Antwerp, and therefore he's always looking to protect his supplies, and that goes all the way back to Portugal. And in Portugal, he had the lines around Lisbon. He would extend his reach on his terms, and he will pull back on his terms to a defendable position, and that just sort of waves of sort of attritional kind of jabbing at the French eventually tired them down more than him, because he had the advantage of the Royal Navy. This is where it's believed, so he recognises his position in Waterloo, and he decides that he gets it surveyed, and he gets a map of the position prepared. So, the map still exists. It's got some errors in it, but it's good enough for his purposes. I think there were some details that were wrong, like the La Haye-Sainte was on the wrong side of the road. But it just goes to show that, these sort of positions Wellington was very interested in. And the sort of, and he wouldn't, he would make sure that every approach to wherever his army was probably, as much as possible, surveyed. It could be argued that he also knew about Quatre Bras. He definitely probably knew about Quatre Bras because of its strategic position. The roads were key. He knew he would have the Prussians on his left. Communication between the two armies was important, both east-west as well as rapid deployment north-south. But I think that Quatre Bras was probably too far away from Brussels. I think he was expecting an attack from Mons. He knew, and was therefore happy to have the Prussians slightly in a more advanced position on his left flank. That's probably what he was expecting, but he knew about Mont Saint-Jean, and to me, signifies that I think if he knew how Napoleon operated, he knew that he liked to attack on the join of an army. Then if you think about it, and if he was expecting the main thrust from Mons, then yes, Mont Saint-Jean, Waterloo would probably be the road where his army would be, his left flank, and the Prussians' right flank. Anyway, we should get back to that later. Also during this time, he can see the people of Belgium during his travels. He can see the limited loyalty to the House of Orange. He believed, I think, that the Belgians would probably remain loyal to the Netherlands, the House of Orange, whilst there was foreign troops on their land. But the Belgians themselves had fought for France since 1792, and so he knew that the Belgians were probably of questionable military reliability. Especially if there were renewed hostilities with France. 24th of August, Wellington reports to Paris, and he is presented to Louis XVIII, and he is in Paris for about 5 months. In that time, he encourages the French government to adopt anti-slavery measures, and Wellington can see immediately that of the poor state that France was in economically, and Wellington is concerned straight off that his main priority as ambassador to Paris was to ensure that the king remained on the throne. But he could see that there's widespread unemployment, and there was particular discontent in the French army. The public saw the Louis XVIII as the fat king, and as the country became poorer and the country began to suffer, the monarchy becomes less and less popular. He in his correspondence, Wellington can see he talks about his concerns with conflicts between pro-Bonapartists and royalists, and he mutes the possibility of Napoleon's restoration. Wellington, at this time, his image, it began as adulation from the French. He was seen as a military hero. He had believed to have befriended the people of France and restored the monarchy. But with the waning of the monarchy's popularity, the resentment started to come out, and the population starts to blame Wellington for ending France's greatest period, and that the person who had ended the France's greatest period was now sitting in a palace in Paris, in their capital. So we're getting the feeling now that the French are beginning to see Napoleon through the reign of Napoleon through rose-tinted spectacles, and all the problems that have occurred since his abdication is firmly being laid at the feet of the king. And not only the King of France, but also seen as a puppet of the British. Okay, so let's just quickly wrap this up then, this part. 9th of November, Wellington begins to receive threatening letters. The British government considers appointing him commander-in-chief in America to basically remove him from France, remove him from Paris. But the Duke of Wellington is astute enough to know that the American situation is insolvable in many respects. And he writes from Paris on the 9th of November. He writes, "You cannot, in my opinion, decide upon sending me to America in case of the occurrence of anything in Europe. There is nobody but myself in whom either yourselves or the country or your allies would feel any confidence." So he is at once telling the British government, you don't want to do that. I'm your best thing to have in Europe. And he's also warning them that his assessment of the political situation in France is that it is imminent that there's going to be a crisis. It also goes to show that he has the power, the influence to dictate to the British government what terms or where he is sent. By 24th of January, the Viscount Castlereagh decides that he needs to withdraw Wellington from Paris. It's too much of a tinderbox, his presence there. And so sends, he's the Prime Minister now, he sends Wellington to Vienna as the Britain's representative, and he sets off to Vienna on the 24th of January. So we are approaching the French coast now, and Still got a bit of way to go. What I think we'll do is we'll start off from here in the next episode, and we'll fly. We're going to fly the route that Napoleon took from the south of France to Paris, and we'll continue our story from there with this parallel discussion about Wellington and Napoleon. If you enjoyed this podcast talk, whatever it is, then please give it a like and subscribe. I would try to do one of these at least once a week. You can also find the previous playlists that we've done. We've looked into D-Day. We've looked into some cathedrals, and you can see all those videos over on YouTube at the moment. But please give us a like and subscribe. It helps a small channel out. And I will then sign off with the state of Europe in suspense. We've got a very itchy, willing Napoleon ready to go. We've got Wellington, who's off to Vienna to probably tut at all these Europeans trying to divide up Europe. And then we have Sir Neil Campbell, who decides to take a holiday. And we will start off from there. So good to see you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.